She found the card on Christmas morning, no gifts, no family, just a note that read, "We're in Aspen. Be a dear and clean the guest bathroom." This is the true story of Claire, a mother left behind like she didn't exist, until she turned betrayal into a legal masterpiece. Have you ever been treated like you were disposable? Drop a comment, someone out there needs to hear your story. Christmas morning, no music, no voices, just the cold silence of a house that had already moved on without Claire and her son. The frost on the window panes painted delicate lace patterns across the glass, but the silence inside the Charleston mansion was heavy and deliberate. Claire sat up in bed, rubbing the stiffness in her lower back, the dull reminder of the injury that had taken her out of the hospital and into this gilded cage. The house was too quiet. No laughter, no clinking mugs, no rustle of wrapping paper or soft murmurs of early excitement. She padded barefoot into the hallway, the rich hardwood floors chilled beneath her skin. The scent of cinnamon and fir hung in the air, artificial and too perfect, like everything Evelyn curated. At the foot of the staircase, Claire paused, hoping for the impossible. But the living room, decked in pristine garlands and hand-blown ornaments, stood untouched. No stockings bulging with goodies, no new toys for Noah beneath the 12-foot tree Evelyn insisted on every year. She walked slowly into the kitchen. The sun filtered through the tall windows, casting golden light onto the marble counters. A red card sat alone by the sink. Thick, expensive cardstock. Claire recognized the handwriting before she even touched it, that slanted, elegant script Evelyn used for every thank you note and veiled insult. Claire, we're off to Aspen for the holidays, just family. Be a dear and tidy the guest bathroom. Noah's flu left it in quite a state. Love, Evelyn. The words knocked the air from her chest more efficiently than any punch. Claire stared at the signature, the loop of the E, a final flourish of exclusion. Just family. As if Claire and Noah were something else, clutter, noise, inconvenience. A soft thump behind her. Noah, his flannel pajamas rumpled from sleep, stood blinking in the doorway. "Did Santa not come this year?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. Claire folded the card and slipped it into her robe pocket before he could see. "Maybe he got delayed," she said, forcing a smile. "Or maybe he knew you were going to Grandma's house and dropped the presents there instead. But Grandma left, didn't she?" His brow furrowed. "I heard the car last night." Claire poured cocoa into a chipped mug, stalling. Well, maybe she just needed a head start. You know how grown-ups are, always rushing around. Noah nodded, but not convincingly. Claire handed him the mug, her hands trembling only slightly. They sat in the living room as he sipped quietly, his small fingers wrapped around the warm ceramic. Claire kept her gaze on the fireless hearth. Last year, Evelyn had said something cruel. Not loud, not dramatic, but cutting. Family is who shows up at the table. Everyone else is just noise. Back then, Claire had let it pass, smiled through it, swallowed the insult. But this year, she was the noise. She watched Noah's eyes drift toward the tree again, still hoping for something, anything. She could have blamed Santa. She could have said Evelyn forgot. But the truth hovered between them, unspoken and heavy. Later, when Noah curled up on the couch with his cocoa, Claire wandered down the hall to Evelyn's room. The door creaked open slowly. The bed was made pillows stacked with clinical precision. Her closet hung open, the hangers empty. Every drawer had been emptied. Even the picture frame on the nightstand, the one with Andrew's graduation photo, was gone. There was no trace left of them. No stocking for Claire. No gift. Not even a mention of goodbye. Claire's jaw tightened. Her fingers clenched involuntarily. She didn't cry, not yet. She turned back down the hallway, each step growing heavier, until she reached the kitchen again. The mug Noah had finished sat in the sink. Claire picked it up absently, rinsed it, then just stopped. The silence surged again, deafening. She slid to the floor slowly, her back pressing against the cold cabinet doors. Her robe bunched beneath her. The tile was freezing. Still, she didn't move. Tears finally came, but they weren't fragile. They weren't soft or self-pitying. They came in silence, sliding down her cheeks without a sound, mixing with the bitter taste in her mouth. This wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't sadness. It was awakening. Something inside her, something that had been ignored, talked over, minimized, broke quietly. But it didn't shatter. It sharpened. She sat there for a long time, staring ahead as the morning light shifted. The house remained still, mocking in its luxury, sterile in its perfection. Claire wiped her face, drew a slow breath, and stood up. She walked to the living room, past the tree, past the empty stockings. She reached the small desk tucked beneath the stairs and opened her laptop. Not to shop, not to scroll. Her fingers moved steadily as she typed. Charleston Legal Aid Services, tenant rights, spousal financial protections, quiet title lawsuit. Noah stirred in the next room, humming something faintly. Claire didn't stop typing. Didn't blink. We're not staying here. Then she opened her laptop not to shop, but to search Legal Aid Charleston. You can live in a mansion and still feel like you're tiptoeing through someone else's museum. Claire moved through the Monroe kitchen with slow, measured steps, not out of caution, but intent. The place gleamed with curated perfection, granite countertops free of fingerprints, a fridge stocked with sparkling water, and organic cheese plates Evelyn would never let Noah touch. It wasn't just a house. It was a monument. And Claire was never more than a guest tolerated, not welcomed. She held a phone in one hand, the camera quietly documenting every crevice of the space. The fingerprints Evelyn always accused her of leaving on the oven handle, there were none. The scuffed tiles in the guest bathroom immaculate. Claire didn't clean because Evelyn told her to. She cleaned because she was building a record. This wasn't obedience. It was evidence. A flicker of memory pulled her back a dinner party last spring. White wine laughter, the Monroe chandelier, casting golden light over a table of wealthy Charleston socialites. Claire had refilled someone's glass too quickly, too naturally. Evelyn had leaned over and whispered just loud enough she was an ICU nurse, you know. She doesn't mind mess. It's in her blood. The room had chuckled, the kind of polite amusement reserved for family in-jokes. Andrew didn't laugh, but he didn't defend her either. The glass in Claire's hand clinked as she placed it carefully in the dishwasher. Her breath was steady calm. She turned from the kitchen and made her way down the hall. Evelyn's office door loomed ahead, an ever-locked vault of Monroe secrets. Claire paused, reached into the side pocket of her robe, and withdrew a thin silver key. It didn't fit, of course not. But the top corner of the door frame had always splintered slightly. A firm nudge, a practiced twist of the knob, and the latch gave with a faint pop. The office was frozen in time. Neat stacks of financial journals, decorative paperweights from Aspen and Paris. A framed photo of Evelyn with Andrew at a fundraising gala. Claire hadn't been invited to that one. She moved quickly now, fingers sifting through drawers and files with precision. Years of sorting patient records had made her efficient. Cold, focused. In the bottom drawer, she found a printed email thread between Evelyn and the family's financial advisor. One line froze her. Please find attached Claire's consent form to exclude her from the family trust disbursement, signed electronically. Claire blinked. That signature wasn't hers. The date the email fabricated. She pulled her phone, snapped photos, then reached for a leather folder labeled Trust, Noah pending transfer. Inside a summary of assets, but nothing finalized. Evelyn had kept control over everything, waiting perhaps to shift it to someone more acceptable, or to no one at all. The room seemed to shrink as another memory came, this time warmer. A spring afternoon years ago. Her father-in-law, James Monroe, had pulled her aside during a backyard gathering. She'd just wiped barbecue sauce off Noah's tiny hands. James had smiled, handed her a small ring of keys. Just in case Evelyn ever forgets who this house belongs to, he said. She'd laughed then, unsure if he was joking. Now standing in the office he once worked from, she knew better. Claire opened the encrypted Drive app on her phone and began scanning documents. Tax records, mortgage summaries. A notarized power of attorney expired. She worked with the discipline of someone used to protocol. She didn't panic. She archived. She encrypted. She covered her tracks. In a side drawer, she found a recorder. Claire pressed play on the most recent saved file. If Claire thinks being married gets her rights, she should read the prenup again. Oh, wait, she never signed it. Evelyn's voice laughed through the speaker. Andrew was too sentimental to push it. Mistake, of course. Claire's stomach flipped. She remembered the day clearly. The prenup discussion, the tension. Evelyn had pushed hard. Andrew had wavered. In the end, they'd signed something else, a joint property agreement, quiet and simple. Not the formal prenup Evelyn had wanted. Claire shut off the recorder, heart thudding. Then her eyes drifted toward the desk's bottom corner, a locked drawer. She tried the silver key again. It clicked. Inside, wrapped in plastic, lay a weathered manila envelope. The original deed to the house. Her name and Andrew's side by side. Equal co-owners. Beneath it, a handwritten note in her father-in-law's firm script, "Protect Noah. And protect yourself." Claire stared at the words for a long time, her hands no longer shaking. She wasn't trespassing. She was reclaiming what was hers. Claire doesn't scream. She scans. Prints. Signs. Because revenge isn't loud. It's notarized. The hum of the old hospital-issued laptop was the only sound in the room. It sat on the dining table, the same table Evelyn had once ordered Claire to set with proper silverware or not at all. Now it held spreadsheets, legal PDFs, and scanned copies of documents that cut sharper than any insult Evelyn had ever whispered. Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard, checking every attachment twice before hitting send. The files went out to one address, Edward Forsyth, lowcountrylegal.com, a name she hadn't spoken aloud in almost a year. But Edward had once been more than just a colleague. He'd been a good man in a cold place back when she still wore scrubs and hope in equal measure. The call connected in under a minute. Claire Edwards' voice crackled on speaker. "I was surprised to see your name." "How bad is it?" "Not bad," Claire said. "Just overdue." She walked him through everything, the deed, the forged emails, the voicemail, the trust documents Evelyn never completed for Noah. Edward listened without interruption. Occasionally, she heard the faint scratch of his pen or a rustle of legal books. When she finished, he let out a slow whistle. "Well," he said, "finally, the house is in your name legally. Evelyn's been living there without contributing financially. South Carolina law doesn't look kindly on that, especially when the paper trail proves you maintained the property." Claire nodded. She'd expected that. She needed more. "I want her out." "I thought you might." Edward was already typing. "We'll file a notice to vacate. You're within your rights. Give her 45 days. If she contests, we'll escalate. But based on this, she doesn't have a leg to stand on." Claire turned away from the screen briefly to check on Noah. He sat cross-legged on the living room rug, building Lego towers and narrating battles between plastic knights and snow monsters. The innocence of his play, the sound of his own voice filling the otherwise silent house, it grounded her. She whispered, "Keep building, sweetheart." Back at the laptop, she opened a new tab. A secure banking portal, one she'd set up months ago quietly after a conversation with her therapist turned financial counselor. At the time, she didn't know what she was preparing for. Now she did. She initiated the creation of a family trust under Noah's name. Transferred partial assets, her savings, a portion of Andrew's yearly tax refund she had documentation for, and the equity listed in the property deed. Then she moved to the joint household account, the one Evelyn used like her personal bank. Claire scrolled through transactions, boutique spas, cashmere throws, a $200 wellness retreat in Sedona, all charged to an account supposedly for groceries and school supplies. She saved screenshots, labeled folders, built evidence. Edward sent over the draft notice to vacate. Claire read it twice. No dramatic monologues, no moral lectures, just clean, lawful language. She reached for her pen and signed. The stroke was fluid. Final. Not rage certainty. She opened the hallway closet and retrieved a crisp folder, one Evelyn had bought for organizing menus during a charity luncheon. Claire slid the notice inside. A quiet chime sounded from her laptop. New alert flight status update, Monroe family arrival, Charleston International Airport, estimated 7:44 p.m. Claire didn't blink. She clicked print notice. Then she whispered, "Welcome home." Evelyn returns from Aspen in her fur coat and designer boots, ready to reclaim her throne, but the palace won't open. She tugged at the brass doorknob the way she always had, with just enough force to let the hinges know who owned them. But the lock didn't budge. Her key, gleaming and custom cut with a tiny M engraved at the top, refused to turn. Click. No give. She tried again. Still locked. Andrew stepped up beside her suitcase wheels, crunching over the frosted path. Try again, he said, confused. Maybe it's stuck. Evelyn pressed her lips into a thin line. I've been turning this key for 20 years, Andrew. It's not stuck. It's been changed. Behind them, the street lay cloaked in a sleepy December hush. Most of the neighbors were home from their own trips, curtains drawn, but more than one blind shifted subtly. In the cold light of the porch, Christmas lights still blinked cheerfully, wrapping the Monroe house in red, gold, and green. The wreath was perfectly centered. The world looked unchanged. Only the lock knew better. Then the door opened. Claire stood there. No makeup, her hair loosely tied back. Dressed in soft gray knits and thick socks, she looked almost spectral. A shadow of domesticity made real. Calm, cold, composed. Andrew blinked. Claire? She didn't answer. Instead, she held out a sealed envelope, the name Evelyn Monroe typed in neat block letters. What is this? Evelyn asked, her voice clipped. Notice of removal, Claire said evenly, along with an itemized list of unpaid household expenses, including utilities, maintenance, and repairs, none of which you've contributed to in 3 years. Evelyn's cheeks flushed. This is my house. Claire didn't flinch. Actually, it's not. You're not on the deed. You've never paid a mortgage installment. Legally, you're a non-contributing resident. I beg your pardon. You have 45 days to vacate. Claire continued, voice level. After that, the court takes over. Evelyn stepped forward. You insolent little Claire lifted a hand, silencing her without a word. From inside the envelope, Evelyn pulled a series of papers, deed copies, financial breakdowns, official notices, and the signed eviction document. Andrew reached for the envelope, scanning the top page. The porch light flickered slightly. Somewhere across the street, Linda from House 12 stood outside with a watering can, dry as bone in this freezing weather, staring. Evelyn's hands trembled. She read aloud, almost choking on the words. Non-contributing resident lacking legal title or fiscal responsibility. Grounds for removal under South Carolina housing law? Her voice cracked. Her fingers, usually steady from years of control, quivered. Claire said nothing. She simply watched. Andrew's gaze shifted from the papers to Claire. His brows furrowed. Is this... True, Claire didn't reply. She just met his eyes, not with rage, not with pleading, but with finality, and closed the door. The reflection of Evelyn's stunned face lingered in the glass. Children don't lie, not about love and never about being abandoned. Snow fell lightly over the backyard, catching on the branches of the oak trees and dusting the red brick patio in white. Noah knelt in the grass, shaping lumpy spheres of snow with his mittens. His snowman leaned precariously, one eye already sliding down. Claire stood behind the glass door, her arms crossed, her breath misting the window. Across the yard, Andrew watched 2 motionless hands buried deep in his coat pockets. They hadn't spoken much since the lockout, since the moment the door had shut and Evelyn's reflection was left on the glass. Now silence stretched across the patio like a frozen river. Breakable. Andrew finally crossed it. She's been messaging me. My mother, he said quietly, voice hoarse, says you're distorting everything. That this is retaliation. Claire didn't blink. She reached into her coat pocket, handed him a flash drive. What's this? Listen, she said. Then decide. He hesitated, then pocketed it without another word. Later that night, Andrew sat in the study. Claire had placed documents neatly on the desk, printed texts, timelines, audio transcripts. But it was the small recording titled Noah, Evelyn, Deckern 3 that drew his attention. He hit play. Evelyn's voice filtered through sweet, clipped, falsely affectionate. Your dad loves me. You're just noise, like your mother, always wanting. Always loud. A beat. Noah's tiny voice confused and soft. But Daddy said he loves me. A chuckle. He says a lot of things. Adults lie sometimes. Click. Andrew exhaled like he'd been punched. He slumped forward, fingers gripping the edge of the desk. Noah had been quieter lately, drawing more, asking fewer questions. And Andrew had thought he had hoped that maybe it was just the season. He found Claire in the hallway, arms folded. She didn't speak. He looked at her, eyes reddened. I should have listened. I should have paid attention. I didn't want apologies, Claire said. I wanted peace for Noah. Andrew nodded. I know, but you deserve one anyway. Upstairs, Noah was already in bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and a book open on his chest. Andrew knelt beside him. Hey, buddy. Noah rolled over. Daddy Andrew stroked his son's hair. I'm sorry I let her make you feel small. Noah's lower lip trembled. Then he wrapped his arms around his father's neck. That hug, soft, desperate, made Andrew's chest break all over again. Downstairs, Claire stood near the staircase, waiting. Not expectant, just present. Andrew came down, slowly stopped in front of her. You were right, about everything. If you'll have me, let's start over, just us three. No Christmas card this year. Just a printed invoice with a stamped eviction order and one chilling line. This is the family you tried to erase. The driveway was wet with melted frost, the Charleston sky the color of old pewter. Evelyn dragged her designer luggage over the concrete with short, angry pulls, each wheel stuttering at a crack she never used to notice. Her lips were tight. Her fur collar clutched high around her neck as if it could still project status even now. Behind her, the house stood still. No one came to the window. No one waved goodbye. She didn't look back. Claire watched from the upstairs bedroom, one hand on the curtain, the other resting lightly on Noah's shoulder. He pressed his face to the glass. Is Grandma sad? He asked. Claire thought for a long time before answering. Grandma made choices. Now we get to make ours. That afternoon, the deed was transferred. The home Evelyn once ruled now belonged to a trust in Noah's name, secured untouchable safe. Andrew stood beside Claire as the notary handed over the last signed page. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. Some changes were better marked by silence. They moved into their new house 2 days later. A white cottage by the sea, not large, not flashy, but flooded with natural light and peace. Noah ran barefoot across the polished floors, leaving behind trails of laughter. Claire lit a candle on the kitchen counter, then stood in the doorway, just breathing. The air didn't feel tight here. She didn't feel like she had to apologize for existing. She posted a single photo online that night, the ocean view from their porch. Noah's back to the camera, his hand holding a small pine cone. The caption read, "If they leave you behind for Christmas, leave them behind for life." It took only hours to go viral. Comments poured in, hundreds, then thousands. Messages from strangers who said they'd been the noise too. Women who had been erased from holiday tables. Men who'd grown up trying to earn love from people who traded it like currency. The algorithm didn't know what hit it. A letter arrived the next week. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Evelyn's perfect cursive etched like carved marble. Claire didn't open it. She stood in the backyard, held the envelope over the grill, and lit a match. It burned fast, the flames curling like ribbon. Later that evening, Claire sat by the shore while Noah built a driftwood fort. He called out over the crashing tide. I love our house. It doesn't feel scared. Claire smiled. Neither do I. On her desk, Claire places the unopened letter from Evelyn into a drawer. She labels it Proof I Survived. The house that once silenced her now echoes with laughter, not control. The woman they underestimated didn't burn the past, she documented it, filed it, and turned it into evidence. Justice didn't arrive in rage, but in receipts, quiet, undeniable final. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Because sometimes reclaiming your life isn't loud, it's simply refusing to leave when they expected you to vanish.